In recent years, the life science and pharmaceutical industry have experienced unprecedented growth. As this momentum continues, it is critical for companies in the pharma and the life science sectors to effectively engage with their target audience, demonstrating empathy, that they truly do care, and understanding of their unique circumstances. By fostering trust-based, I'm stressing this, trust-based relationships, these companies can ensure long-term success. My guest today will share valuable insights on how organizations can strategically position themselves to achieve their goals and make a positive impact in the industry. But before we get started, my name is Donna Peterson, and you are listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast. I go around the world and I speak with industry leaders and marketing executives about their industry, what type of marketing is working, what sources are working, what channels to use, tactics, and now let's throw it in the mix, what AI tools they all should be using. But let's jump in. Today, my guest is Scott Vail. He is the National Sales Manager for MJH Life Science. Hi, Scott. How are you today?
Hi, Donna. I'm doing great. Thanks, and thanks for having me. Nice to share my thoughts with your audience.
Oh, well, I love hearing your thoughts. And just to tell the audience, I think Scott and I have known each other 30 years.
We go back, yep. Both started in direct marketing. You were one of the very first people whom I met in the direct marketing business many years ago.
Yeah, it is, and it has evolved and changed. And just like marketing has evolved and changed, so has the pharmaceutical and life science space. And so today, you go.
Sorry, no, I was going to say absolutely. It has evolved and changed, and it really remains just such a vibrant and dynamic market with so much investment being made into it, so much opportunity. So it's an exciting field to be in, absolutely.
It is exciting, but you do run into these challenges. But before I start talking about that, let's jump into some of the questions, which I know you're going to really help our audience understand. And how can pharmaceutical and life science companies ensure that their marketing efforts are reaching a qualified group of people that will give them that good response and drive and increase their sales?
Good question. And we already touched on about how this is just such a vibrant market right now. I would say it's really as close to a recession-proof business as you could find. But even in a market that is, ripe with opportunity and one that has all this investment being made into it, it's really important, I think, to hone in on your best prospects. And your question kind of hints at the difference between, what's the difference between a response list versus a compiled list?
Yes.
And it raises that point, and I think it's an important consideration. I've heard people espouse the theory that all names are out there in all these different formats. You don't necessarily, there's a whole different way of reaching these people, but that kind of through a direct marketing campaign, and that kind of overlooks or ignores, the fact of how data is compiled, about the value of how it's updated and qualified, and also the source that it's associated with. I mean, and
Yes.
to categorize data as a commodity in that sense just doesn't make sense, because again, it looks past those important things. I think it's true to some degree, but if as a consumer, I have a trusted source that I rely on for information and that I come back to, then I know it's credible. I'm going to be more likely to engage with an offer that's associated with that. If I get a third-party email that notes it's from Biopharm International,
Yeah.
Or MJH Life Sciences, I know that I rely on MJH Life Sciences for their information. For me, it's a value or a trusted source of information. I'm more apt. It's almost like they kind of pre-qualified the offer.
Yes.
And I feel that it's kind of a good housekeeping seal of approval if I get it and I know that it's affiliated with its trusted source for me. So I'm much more inclined, I think, to look at that. And that carries through then really, across the board on any direct marketing campaign if you're looking at and you have that positive association with the source.
I totally agree with that. I think the source is so very important, and people don't dig into what the source of a list is, because if you are looking at those large compiled files, they're being pulled from so many different places. No one can really tell you who the source is.
Mm-hmm.
And I find when I go to industry specific sources like BioPharm International, it almost saves the sales team at least 5 steps, because we already are reaching those good quality people that have that specific title, that are in that specific industry, and they have self-reported themselves that they are interested in getting third-party promotions.
Yeah,
so they're more effective.
absolutely. And that's a good point too about that these are people who are engaged with that, but like you use the term self-reported. I mean, these are people who are open and receptive to reading, your offer, and because because the source that it's coming from too, and it has that positive association, then you're more apt to get a response from them.
Yes. So let me ask you a quick question. This is a little off. When people send an email blast with you, are they able to put BioPharm International in the from line?
Yes. Yeah, we give our sponsors that opportunity, and they can customize the subject line, of course, but also the from line, and they can have it either come from them or it comes from BioPharm. But everything, of course, has a frame around it with all the opt-out language and telling the recipient why they're getting that messaging, and again, branding it along with BioPharm.
Yeah. Well, that's important, because nowadays a lot of people in the media will talk about, oh, how do you get your emails open? How do we do this? And they're all trying little tricks. But if you have a brand name like BioPharm International that someone recognizes right there, they're more apt to open the email versus XYZ company they've never heard about before.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So now when we talk about this, and I know we talked about, direct mail and direct marketing, but there's so many different marketing channels out there. For the pharmaceutical and life science spaces, which channels do you feel are the most responsive, and how can those brands do it consistently so that their messages do foster that strong relationship that instills trust?
Another good question. And once again, it's not an easy answer, I think, just because there's not a one size fits all right here. Or there's no silver bullet or one, this is the best channel that you need to use. And I think, the operative word here is multi-channel. And a lot of it comes down to how people are consuming their information too, because for each person, their preferences are going to be different. What do I rely on? What am I using to get my news and my information? Where am I getting my work updates? What's my preference for staying in contact with people? So, social media is becoming more of an important factor in B2B, whereas a few years ago, social media kind of existed really just in the consumer world, I think. But we're seeing more of a shift towards that, and whether it's through LinkedIn or Twitter, where that's becoming more of a player too. I think that every publisher's challenge is how do you monetize that?
Right.
Most people have built up a pretty big audience or a following through those two social media networks, but you can't really do advertising campaigns through that. And you can tweet out and drive people to other media or do it as a complement to other existing campaigns, but you're not really using social media on its own as that. We talked a little bit earlier, I talked a little bit about how, the vibrancy of the life science market and all the opportunity that exists there. Marketers too, I think, are pretty innovative, and they're pushing the envelope on platforms here and making use of a lot of thought leadership platforms in the life sciences industry, where again there's so much innovation. People want to share their findings and discoveries. We're using a lot of webinars, we're using a lot of podcasts now. Video is taking hold, and people are using that, and again, all sort of in the name of thought leadership and putting their subject matter experts out there to help people. And the key thing on this too is when you're using channels like that is that you want to make sure that it is educational, because very often I think marketers have the urge they've paid for this webcast or whatever channel it is, and they feel the need to tell their sales message and make it kind of a commercial messaging. But if you do that, then you lose the audience or some of the audience and the engagement on that. If you make it, much more educational and something that's going to help people learn and understand stuff that they can use in their job, then you're going to have much more engaged audience.
I totally agree with that, because when I'm talking to clients, of course, they want to promote whether it's an upcoming auction or an executive education program or a different product. I get that, but make sure you have that educational side to it. You've got to offer value now to these people. You've got to offer them something that they could use right now. And when you say that, the educational side, a webinar, keep it educational. Don't switch it to all of a sudden, all you're doing is giving a demo about your platform, or you're giving a big, who are we? World innovators. I don't go to companies and say, you know what, we're 42 years, we've been in business. Who cares? Do you have what I need? That's what they care about. And then I try to just help them navigate this sea. Like the whole reason you and I were discussing earlier, the whole reason I started the podcast was to offer value so that people could understand what sources to use and what marketing tactics actually do work in this B2B sector. So education is very important.
Absolutely. Yep. And education is important. And back to your original question too, about what is the one source, or what's the, how do people navigate this increasingly complex with all these different media? Again, there's no one source. I use the term multi-channel, and I think that's the key. And make sure that all your effort, your messaging is consistent, and try to have one channel kind of be complementary to what you're doing through another channel.
So then with BioPharm International and the different people that have used your different channels, is there a certain package that you like, or a combo that you like, or frequency? Like, is it multiple email blasts with social posts? Is it banners? What have you seen work the best?
Kind of all of the above, and so much, I think from our perspective as the media company, that you really need to engage. We need to engage our clients and have that conversation to understand what they're trying to accomplish, and then tailor our recommendation accordingly. Because if it's a product launch that somebody's doing and they're looking to create awareness, that's going to be a different strategy than if you have somebody who's trying to develop MQLs, marketing qualified leads, for their sales team. That's something that's more focused on content. Some people come and they want to use this as a platform to sort of get their subject matter experts out there as industry leaders too. Others say, well, we want to do content marketing, but we don't have somebody who can talk on that. So we want you to help us in creating it. So it's really, again, it's, the key from our perspective is to listen to what people are trying to accomplish and figure out how to help them get across that finish line or get to where they want to be.
And that makes sense, because it also depends on the offer. I come to you a lot of times when I have industrial auctions to promote. And of course, my time frame is very short. Sometimes we have 2 weeks to a month. So that kind of trims down what channels we could possibly use. And that's why we have a tendency to stick to the email, just because that'll go directly to the individual. They'll get it within that short period of time so that they're aware of the auction. But it is the product. Now, going just quickly back to the social media side, and I guess you really answered that, because I know for B2B offers, and of course my clients have expensive B2B offers, there is no way they are going to sell their products or pieces of equipment by a social post. There's just no way. But I do agree that I think a social post can help with your branding. It can help with building that relationship and giving your company more validity out there, I guess, based on what the social post might say.
Yeah, that's another way. Exactly. It's working. It's not going to be the standalone working by itself, but done in conjunction with your email campaign. It's just another touch point with that audience and another way for them to sort of, whether it's subliminal or they're just kind of like getting that, stamp of your brand through the social media post, but they've seen the social media post, then the email comes in, and maybe they're more receptive to opening that or acting on that because they've already got, they saw something through social media.
I think that definitely, I have seen that work with my clients, whether we do an email blast frequency, like 2 email blasts, close together. They can't be spaced out too far. Otherwise you lose the power of the frequency. But if we did an email blast with a social post, they help each other. They just complement each other because people see the name. Maybe they remember, oh yeah, that's right, I got that email last week when I was traveling. I want to go back to that. And then they take action. And I think all of them together really help your campaign succeed.
Right. I mean, those are 2 basic tenets of, traditional marketing campaigns: frequency and continuity. And I think with the internet and with some of the digital campaigns and the immediacy of some of these, people tend to forget that, and they'll do a one-time email blast. And if they don't get, whatever the open rate is that they were targeting or shooting for, then they think it wasn't successful. But like you say, these things work in concert with one another. And going back to that again, frequency and continuity, and just having a sustained presence in there has a huge impact on these campaigns.
It doesn't. And one-off campaigns, whether it's print or email, doesn't work the way it used to. When you and I first started, it was a different world out there. And then when email came about, there wasn't as many email marketing promotions out there. And so you could do a one-off email and hit those sales goals. And now, like you said, as marketers, we have to be a little bit more innovative in figuring out the right channels and timing so that it really makes a difference and gets people to respond.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition in people's inboxes, right? So what do you do to get your message to stand out in that? What do you do so that that one is going to be opened, or how is it different from the other 100+ emails in somebody's inbox?
Okay, yeah. And with your file, I know you have a great file. It's how many records now, BioPharm International?
So our entire life sciences database has over 1 million records in it. About 100,000 of those are biopharm related. And so again, a response list. So these are people who have opted in to receive our print magazine, people who have opted in to receive the newsletter, people who have engaged with other content, whether it's listening to a webinar, attending a podcast, downloading a white paper or something else like that. But it's the whole list again is about 1 million records, and about 100,000 of those are biopharm.
Interesting. And when they subscribe, what information are they reporting to you?
Sort of standard demographic information. Obviously you get the company title, which most people care about. We have, and then we've done some data overlays with this too. So we have company size, broken down both by sales volume as well as the number of employees. We even get as granular now of being able to identify people based on topics of interest, depending on what articles they've accessed through the website or through our e-newsletters. Of course, internationally, that's a bit of a tricky thing because we can't capture that data in Europe because of GDPR. But we have sort of standard reporting for when people, and there are different data sources, because if you're a print subscriber, you have to fill out more detailed information. If you're a subscriber to the e-newsletter, you don't need to give a physical address. So we've got, again, some disparate data sources in this, and we try to standardize all the data so that the people who use this list can break down the list in the manner that's going to be most effective for them.
And that's very important, because it used to be years ago, you wanted this big list, the old spray and pray, they said, just give me a big list. Let's just send it out there and see who responds. And now, and I know email isn't that expensive compared to print, but still with email, you don't want to do that, because you want to go and target your specific audience, and you want to send your promotions to those people, because you can then design the messaging to speak to them. And that's when you'll get a better response.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the whole idea, right? Don't use the shotgun approach with email. We want to use a custom, the custom list, build by applying the right demographics, finding the right people, and use a rifle approach and hone in on the people who are most likely. You say email isn't that expensive compared to print, and no, it's not. But, again, we've got a database with over 100,000 or close to 100,000 records in it. For somebody to come in and buy the whole list is pretty expensive. So the idea is not to go to everybody, but to find the right people and the ones who are going to be most receptive to your offer.
And that goes back to the beginning when I was talking about you really have to understand your audience now. And when you can take a list like BioPharm International, you can hone into that specific target audience and show those people that you do understand their situation and that your product and service can help them in this way. That's when they are going to take that next step, whatever your call to action is, because you're going to help them do their job faster and better, which in this space they all need because it's growing at such a rapid speed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you hit the nail on the head there, Donna, in talking about providing a solution, a useful solution. So if you can provide value to this person in the form of whether it's educating them or giving them, something that's going to help them do their job better, then that's where you make the connection with them and you're going to get more of a response and more of an engaged audience.
It's kind of funny when you give out just some free piece of information, whether it's a checklist or you offer them to come to a free webinar. People love to get something for free. And if they walk away getting something for free that offers them value, then you're going to be willing to maybe spend some money with them because you understand that, hey, they understand me, but look, they also gave me this information already that I can utilize, and I've seen it work. And it's very effective that way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Now, since you and I both started kind of before the internet, so it was more about the print side, do you see print still being effective for this industry?
I do. And again, I think that's one of those things where publishers are struggling a little bit. There's been this decided shift from print to digital, and I've been doing this long enough and I've seen it. And I think it's held up better, meaning print has held up better in certain industries. And there's a variety of factors that contribute to that. In our case, I think because the nature of our content is so scientific and so technical in nature, that type of content lends itself better to print in the sense that, and digital is great, right? Digital it's generally speaking, it's going to be less expensive than print. It's immediate, it's measurable. There's all these variety of channels and different ways, that digital has really revolutionized media. But it's also fleeting. A lot of times people get an e-newsletter and their inclination is to read it quickly and clear it out of their inbox because they know there's other emails that are coming in. So whereas print, it has that, and I don't like to use terms like shelf life, but it really does in this case have that shelf life. And if you've got content like ours that, again, it's very scientific, somebody wants to hold on to and refer back to, that's going to, the print lends itself well to that. And another factor at play with our audience, this doesn't work across all fields, but our audience is comprised of scientists and researchers, people who work in labs and they're bench workers. They're not necessarily in front of a computer all day. They're not necessarily, like I sit at my desk when I'm in the office and I'm, kind of live my day in my inbox. These people aren't necessarily, looking at email like that. By no means are they, Luddites. They're definitely very tech enabled, but they're also performing their work in a different manner than traditional office workers. So they're not always in front of a computer necessarily. So for that reason, I think print has also held up pretty well in this sector.
That's a very interesting point because I think of scientists and I don't know why. I was just thinking computer. Yeah, they're there checking their emails regularly, but you're right. If they're off on the microscope or other pieces of equipment, they're not near their computer. And when they get there, they're quickly going through emails. And just like all of us, yes, you get a newsletter. You quickly might open it if you know it, and then you see what topics they're talking about is of interest to them. Should you read the full article? But if you get that print magazine and you get those good print magazines, I know I still keep them on my desk. I may not read them today. I may not read them within a week, but I keep them there until I do read them. So usually, hopefully within a month, I've gone through that pile, but that's what print does, especially when I know the content within the publication is of quality for me. And then because of print, if I get an article that I really like, now I'm probably dating myself, but I will rip it out. I rip
Sure.
it out and I take excerpts of it and I keep it. Of course, you could probably print it out if you got something digital, but like I said, then you would have to have spent time going through that newsletter and pulling that out, where I know for a fact there's newsletters I have saved. And I don't know, Scott, if it happens to you, but I don't go back. I've saved them to go back and look at them, but I don't.
Right. Yeah. The best of intentions. For me personally, it's an email management issue. It's like, where do I save them so that I can refer back to it? And like, of course, you've got the search capabilities. But to your point, I mean, there's nothing quite like that, print article that you can take out. You can, write notes in the column and save it for future reference. So, but again, and I've talked about the merits of print, and it goes back to the comments that I made earlier about multi-channel, because I just the same way well, I'm extolling the virtues of print. I'm not espousing it as the be all end all by any means, but it's part of a mix that works in concert with these other things. And I would say absolutely our most effective campaigns that we work with our partners on make use of both print and digital. They have that print to build the awareness, to have a nice sustained presence, but then they're doing digital to do something that's innovative, to do lead gen programs and to do their thought leadership campaigns. So
I would see that to be very effective, because you get a print publication in, or anything print for that matter, you've at least seen the company name. You've seen it. And that's when people are going to open the emails. Yeah, as we mentioned before, people get so many emails now. If they don't know the company or your subject line doesn't speak directly to them, they're not going to open it. Where if you got a print publication and you're like, wow, or a print piece, and you're like, oh, I'm really interested in that. And then you see an email, you're going to open it up and you're going to take action.
I'll share one more thing about print, because this is interesting and it's been sort of an evolution or a little time in coming. We're seeing more clients now utilize QR codes in print ads.
Mm-hmm.
And I had seen that years ago, over a decade ago. I had, when they first came out, people tried, and I think it was an idea then that was ahead of its time. And this is my theory, is that this is a result of the pandemic, is that QR codes now have become more ubiquitous. And then when for a while you would go to a restaurant, and how do you get the menu? You download a QR code. So people are used to that now. And the same thing, and we've seen a couple of clients incorporate that into their print ads with some success. So
yeah, that's a good point, because I don't remember QR codes. And when they came out, I remember being at the conferences, but I thought, what do we need this for on the B2B side? It's not a QR code to buy something. It's not a sales flyer, but you're right. I think retrieving your menu at a restaurant made people more comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
They now understand that you can take that QR code and just bring them to an information page. It doesn't have to be a sales promotion. It can be an information page about that HPLC machine, or how the HPLC machine works. It's amazing.
Yep.
So do you feel that that's one of the things in the future we're going to see more of, the use of the QR codes and people doing more print so that their promotions stand out?
I think that people who are using print are going to go back and take a closer look at incorporating QR codes, because that's always been kind of the rub against print advertising now, because everything is just so focused on being able to show return on investment, being able to generate leads from a campaign. How do you do that through print? Well, you can't really, and it's always been a challenge, and that's why I think people have migrated from print to more digital, because they're under pressure. Marketers are under pressure to be able to generate leads or be able to show the return from their campaign. So now if you have something that can kind of tie print into that, so I think that, yeah, people who are using print are going to make more use of the QR code. And a lot of it is of course driven, like we said, by what the consumer is used to. And if the consumer is more apt to utilize a QR code, you're going to find that the marketers are going to incorporate that into their messaging.
Yeah, well, that is a very good point for us to stop on, because right there, when you can show that return on investment when it comes to print, I know that was the argument I heard from several of my clients back in the day. Like, well, we don't know who's getting the print piece, who's actually responding to it. We love email. It's like instant gratification. They can see the opens and the clicks. But now if they can see that QR code being used from that print campaign, and if these people do the QR code and then click further, it gives it more validity there. So that's a very
said.
good idea. Yes, yes. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time and shedding some light for us. I think we all need it because this industry is growing so fast and companies need to know how to market their products and services the right way. So I thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Donna.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
All right. So long.
Thank you for listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss our next episode. And in the meantime, if you'd like to talk to me, please feel free to send me an email to dpeterson@worldinnovators.com. Till next time, have a great day.